Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodhanandana Raja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanchari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodhanandana Raja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yasodhanandana Raja Janarandana Yasodhanandana Raja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Yam Nishika Paramahamsa Prabhupada Sutara Satashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koli Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON BBD Founder Charity Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ganta Raja Ki Go the Premananda Hari Hari Go Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So today's verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 26. Kachit Purano Purushasvanabhyam Padmanurite Hakilavatino Asata Ura Kushalam Vihaya Kritasano Kushalam Surgehe Kachit Purano Purusho Svanabhyam Padmanuvritteha kila vitno. Asata urya kushalam vidhaya. Krita chanam kushalam surgehe. Kachit purano purusho saravya. Padmanuvritye hakila vitno. Asata urya kushalam vidhaya. Krita chano kushalam surgehe. Kachit, weather. Purano, the original. Purusho, personalities of Godhead. Krishna and Balaram. Svanabhya, Brahma, Padma Anuvritya. By the request of one who is born from the lotus. Iha, here. Kila, certainly. Abhyutano, incarnated. Asate, Urya, in the world. Kushalam, well-being. Vidhaya, for doing so. Kritasano, the elevators of everyone's prosperity. Kushalam, all well. Suragehe, in the house of Surasen. Translation, please tell me whether the original personalities of Godhead, who incarnated themselves at the request of Brahma, who is born out of the lotus flower of the Lord, and who have increased the prosperity of the world by elevating everyone, doing well in the house of Surasen. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna and Balaram are not two different personalities of Godhead. God is one without a second, but he expands himself in many forms without their being separate from one another. They are all plenary expansions. The immediate expansion of Lord Krishna is Baladev, and Brahma, born from the lotus flower from Garbhodaksha Vishnu, is an expansion of Baladev. This indicates that Krishna and Baladev are not subjected to the regulations of the universe. On the contrary, the whole universe is under their subjugation. They appear at the request of Brahma to liberate the burden of the world, and they relieve the world by many superhuman activities so that everyone may become happy and prosperous. Without the grace of the Lord, no one can become happy and prosperous. Because the happiness of the family of the Lord's devotees depends on the happiness of the Lord, Vidura first of all inquired about the well-being of the Lord. Durgame parimendasya skala patekatirmahu svakripayustudanana shanta avalambanam. Om agyanatabrandasya jananjana shalakaya Chakshurmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, questions by Vidura. So, a few days ago we were talking about how Vidura was travelling on all the places of pilgrimage, and he finally came to the banks of the Yamuna River, and to his delight, who should he see but another beautiful devotee of Krishna in Uddhava. So that is like to see one devotee sometimes when you haven't seen a devotee is like a feast for the eyes. It's like a breaking of the drought in the desert. So when you see a devotee like that, sometimes you just want to pump that devotee full of questions like, what's happening? What's going on? how about this devotee and that devotee? So Uddhava, Vidura, he was filled with this enthusiasm. And of course the first question he asks is about the Lord of his heart, Sri Krishna. So it's said here that we know, probably saying in the purport before, that he actually knew he'd been travelling for a long, long time on all the pilgrimages all over India. Said you can travel to so many places. Prabhupada said there's thousands of places you can go to where Lord Vishnu has appeared, or Krishna has appeared in his incarnations. And to go to all these places is very, very purificatory and helps one understand the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just maybe to enhance something that I was saying last week, just like sometimes people like to go to historical places where there may have been some significance in the history of civilization, like for instance in Cambodia you go to Angkor Wat and there's some ruins, even though it was albeit was a Vishnu temple, a Buddha temple, it's just like the ruins of a building. So it's very architectural and it's very significant historically, and we may become enriched a little bit by going there and understanding the culture of other civilizations, and that can enhance our jnana, our knowledge, right? Others who take it upon themselves that at some point in time I will go on a pilgrimage and I will go to all these holy places in India where Lord incarnated or the demigods were there, and I will perform some worship there. And by the performance of this worship, there will be some benefit for me in the form of pious activities. So that's what a lot of people do in India. In Mayapur, at any given time on the weekend, we may get up to 500,000 pilgrims who will come and go donate in charity and pay the respects to God. But if you ask a lot of them, it's a natural act of pious activities, and that's good karma. They're good karmas. That's karma yoga. Very nice. But for the devotee who goes to the places, all the different places of pilgrimage, he wants to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it gladdens his heart and purifies his heart from the material contamination of this three modes of material nature that we're trapped in. So that is bhakti, that is pure, the essence of devotional service. So that's why it is good to go places of pilgrimage, not only to shop around for a nice basket or a dhoti or a sari, but actually to understand the nature of the pastimes of the place and follow in the footsteps of the acharyas, particularly Srila Prabhupada's been there, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he went to so many places, 108 footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, where Lord Chaitanya went, and so on. So the principal question about Krishna. So Vidura is understanding that he's been travelling for a long time, he knows that Krishna's gone, and in the last purport, Srila Prabhupada was saying, there was this, Dasa was saying that according to Jiva Goswami, the news was shocking to Vidura when he found out about the disappearance of his dynasty. And that was quite a while ago now, but therefore he inquired again out of great curiosity. Thus his inquiry was psychological and not practical. So I can relate and experience this, like sometimes when you have a great devotee that's been on the planet, people want to know. Just like, for instance, in my case, when I go travelling overseas and people know that Srila Prabhupada initiated me, I'm a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, first question is, tell me about your experience with Srila Prabhupada. Do you have any personal association with Srila Prabhupada? They all want to know. every place I go to tell me about Srila Prabhupada. Well, sadly, like I had a little bit of association with Srila Prabhupada, that I saw him, was initiated by him, and maybe one short, quick conversation, but that was the extent of it. But the purpose of Srila Prabhupada was not to fulfill answer the questions of his 10,000 disciples. His purpose on this planet was to translate all the books, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he nearly completed. He got up to the 10th canto, wrote a brief summary of it, and Chaitanya Charitamrita for the benefit, and other many literatures, for the benefit of the Yuga Dharma, for the next 10,000 years at least, in this age of Kali Yuga, that Srila Prabhupada's books will be the foundation of this movement. And therefore, we understood this, so we didn't bother Srila Prabhupada. I remember one of my first experiences with Srila Prabhupada was that I, by accident, came to the temple very early in the morning because I didn't have a clock and I didn't want to miss Mangalati, so I got there at 2:30 in the morning. And everybody was fast asleep, except there was still one light on, and that was Srila Prabhupada's light in Melbourne, up there in his room. He's already translating his books. So consequently, when we went out on book distribution, that was all we had. We had a cook and we had book distributors and maybe a cleaner, that was it. So most of the people went out on Harinam or distributing books. So I'd be out in the middle of New South Wales somewhere, the back of Burke or Narendra or somewhere, and then somewhere or other shipment of books had arrived, a couple of boxes of books, and there'd be some new books like the 6th Canto Part 1 with these amazing pictures of, like all the demigods and King Prithu and so many fantastic stories. So we'd read this, and Srila Prabhupada in his purports would be like he's preaching to us. So it's almost, to me, that was the experience of my direct association with Srila Prabhupada. So this is how Srila Prabhupada instructed his disciples through his books. And that situation still continues, actually. It's very fortunate for all of us. So we're reading Srila Prabhupada's purports, and he's revealed so much to us in this manner. So when Vidura came across it, there were so many interesting questions, but the first question he asked was about Krishna, about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here it says whether the original personalities of Godhead who incarnate themselves at the request of Lord Brahma. So he doesn't mention any names, but Srila Prabhupada immediately goes into the purport that he's talking about Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram. Now, if someone read that line, they might get a little bit confused, think the Supreme Person. So there's two Supreme Persons. So because this is how it sort of appears in the sloka here. But Srila Prabhupada explains there's not two different Supreme Personalities, there's only one. It's Krishna. And he's a Swayam. So Krishna, from his original Swayam form, he expands himself into so many forms, and his principal form, first form, expands himself into Balaram. And then Balaram was also known as Baladev, expands himself into his secondary, his expansion is Sankarshan, and then from Sankarshan he takes control of this Mahatattva and expands as Mahavishnu, who then expands as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and this is where it was said that Lord Brahma comes from the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then of course Shirodakshaya, the super soul within the heart. So all these expansions come from Baladev. Now Baladev also has a secondary expansion that he becomes the seat for Lord Krishna. So when Lord comes as Mahavishnu, Baladev comes in his secondary expansion from Sankarshan, and he becomes Anantashesha, the 1,000-hooded serpent that sits, that Lord Vishnu sits upon that seat, that wonderful esoteric picture that we see, or Lord Vishnu with the thousands of hoods, which was on the Sri Upanishad, which I bought. That was my first book. Remember Sri Upanishad, and a beautiful blue cover, Lord Vishnu on the cover with thousands of hoods. And I left it on my table there at home, and my mother saw it. And she had a complete freak out. Just the scary picture. Sometimes Krishna's books are very, very potent. So he takes, not only does he sit as Nanta Shesh, but he also has all the different paraphernalias like the whisk and the chamras and the conch and any other facility. I think there's so many facilities that he provides for Lord Vishnu. And when Lord Krishna comes, he comes as Balaram, and he's also in that mood of Sankirtan that he provides facility for Lord Krishna. Principally, when just before Lord Krishna came, he took birth in the same womb, in Mother Devaki's womb, and he stayed in that womb for 7 months, and then he was transferred into the womb of Rohini. But previous to that, there were 6 other births that Kamsa dispatched, and we were hearing about it just the other day, that they were his sons from another birth. They claim his sons from another birth. So they were associated with some demoniac qualities. So therefore, Balaram in the 7th birth took birth in the womb of Devaka to purify that womb, and then of course Krishna came along. So that was Balaram's function, and because Balaram was born first, he was always there looking out for his younger brother. He was always protective of Krishna, and he understood Krishna, his relationship with Krishna, as Krishna being the supreme being, him being the servant. And there were so many circumstances where the devotees of Vrindavan, they were put into the spell of Yoga Maya, but they couldn't understand, because they couldn't understand that Krishna was the Supreme Person, they felt afraid for Krishna. Just like in that particular circumstance when Krishna was dancing on the hoods of Kali in so many ways, and it seemed that Kali grabbed him and swallowed him up and took him under the ocean, and all the residents fainted. Oh, our Krishna's gone. And so they were in complete anxiety. But Lord Balaram was smiling, so no, he'll come out of that, because he actually knew the potency of Lord Krishna. And also when Lord Krishna lifted Govardhana Hill and got everybody to come under the hill, said, oh, we'll protect you from King Indra's rain and wrath. And so all the residents were very smilingly looking at Krishna. Sometimes they'd be apprehensive that how's the little boy? He's lifting this whole mountain with his finger. So how's this going? We'll give him a hand. So all the coward men put up their sticks to try and hold up the mountain. I think one stage I read the pastime there somewhere where Krishna just let them just almost take the strain there, and they sort of like try to hold the mountain up, and they realised that that was beyond their means. But at another point in time, Krishna was focused, and all he focused on keeping the hill lifted there, of course, and all the same focused, because it was said that the gopis told Radhi not to look at him, not to glance at him, because if he glanced at her, then he would get the shakes, shiver in total ecstasy. So at one point in time, Krishna just happened to glance over in the direction of the gopis, and he said that he noticed the breasts of the gopis, and immediately he sort of began to, the mountain began to tremble a little bit. And all the residents, they were totally horrified. Oh, they were alarmed. Oh, Krishna's going to drop the mountain on us. But Lord Balaram was smiling. He knew exactly what was going on. So in this way, he protected Krishna. And sometimes he would chastise Krishna. They were two different personalities, yet they were the same Lord. In one sense, we could say, what is the difference between Balaram and Krishna, and what is the answer usually? One is black and one is white, right? You get that answer straight away. But still, there is a difference. There's so Lord Balaram, he lived with Krishna in Dwarka, and he wanted to protect Krishna. So when Krishna got the letter from Rookmini, one pastime, Krishna was living in Dwarka, he got a letter from Rookmini's first wife he was going to marry. Was Rookmini the first wife? Saying, please rescue me because I'm going to marry Salia? Shishupal. Going to marry Shishupal, and I only want to marry you. I don't want to marry anyone else. So Krishna went there with his chariot drive. Immediately took off with Daruka, and he travelled 1,000 miles in one night. So you do the maths on that in the chariot. It's pretty fast. So Balaram came with his army. He wanted to protect Krishna, so he took his army with him. And then eventually, the next day, Krishna did kidnap Rookmini, and then there was a great chase that ensued. That they were after Rookmi and Shishupal were totally. Well, Shishupal was totally distraught, and Rookmi was very, very incensed by the fact that Krishna stole his sister, so he went chasing after Krishna. And Krishna single-handedly demolished his army, and then he captured Rookmi, and Balaram by that time had caught up, and he was there also. And Krishna was about to, because Rookmi was his adversary, Krishna was about to dispatch him, but he was the sister of his Rookmini. So, I mean, he was the brother of Rookmini. Rookmini was his sister, and she said, oh, please have mercy on my brother. So Krishna's looking at him, and he's got him all tied up, and he's chopping a bit of hair off here, chopped a bit of his moustache, just to make him just to punish him in the sense that a Kshatriya is very proud of his stature and his looks and everything, so he thought that he'll humble him like that and shame him in this way, so he didn't have to kill him. And he's just enjoying the fact that he's taking a bit off here and a bit off there. And Balaram comes along and chastises him and said, Krishna, you're being cruel, you shouldn't be doing this, he is your brother-in-law. And he mildly admonished Krishna for doing that, so at that point in time. But later on, it was Balaram had to kill him anyway, kill Rookmi, because actually Rookmi was so offensive that he challenged Balaram to a game of chess, a Kshatriya sport, and then there was some wager, and he won the first game. And he said, oh, Balaram, you're just a coward boy. And he was hurling these insults at Balaram, let's play it again. They played again and he lost, but he wouldn't accept that he lost. And they played again, and he still didn't accept that he lost. And he said, actually, I won. No, I won. And then he began to insult Balaram even further because he's very jealous, envious of the Bhoja dynasty and Dwarka and Krishna, and he was actually envious. He was a demon. All demons envious the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Balaram got his club and he whacked him one. That was it. So actually Balaram had to fix him up. So and then there was the Kurukshetra war, and Balaram got a little bit upset about the Kurukshetra war. He said, I'm not going to participate because he was very favoured to Duryodhana. So therefore he went on pilgrimage and he left. So still we can understand that they are two different personalities there. So that is coming from Krishna. And here it says that Krishna is the fact that Anadira Govinda, that Krishna has so many different forms and incarnations, so many different personalities. Shanti Prabhu, if you read his epic class yesterday, a beautiful class, he was describing that Lord Chaitanya took Rupa Goswami aside and he told hymn about all the different incarnations and expansions of Krishna. So many avatars, so many Leela avatars, Guna avatars, Narayan expansions, Vishnu expansions, and so on and so forth. In fact, Srila Prabhupada says that Ananta Shesh, with his thousands of hoods, can't even come to the end of the different expansions of Krishna within these universes and the spiritual universe. So Krishna has different capacities, and in all these expansions there's different forms and different pastimes. So we have Lord Nisha on the altar. So he is particular pastime, and he comes as a lion, very angry, and he roars, and he manifests symptoms of anger. Yet in other incarnations, it's just Chaitanya, when he comes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's the most merciful incarnation to all the living entities. So all these expansions are his expansions of his spiritual form. They always come, and Srila Prabhupada explains that they're not subject to the material regulations. It's actually all the incarnations, expansions of Supreme Personality of Godhead are spiritual expansions. They're not bound by the three modes of material nature. So sometimes there is some confusion that because everything here that we see in this material world is expansion of our material bodies, goodness, passion and ignorance and all the material elements, people think that actually God, if he has a form, is material. So Srila Prabhupada has a terminology for these people. I really love this. He calls them mundane wranglers. Has anybody heard that? Anybody come across that? The mundane wranglers? So the so-called mundane wranglers will say this and that. So they speculate that if God has a form, then he's limited. So therefore we cannot limit God by saying he has a form. This is particularly true in the Islamic philosophy. Allah Akbar, Allah is great, but there is no mention of his form. The impersonalists are also saying that if God comes within this material world, it's a material form, it's a manifestation, a mode of goodness, and then after God has performed in the manifestation of his mode of goodness, has performed his activities, he goes back to his original impersonal feature, which is Brahman feature. So what they are not understanding here, that God is not limited to one form. He has many forms. He has unlimited forms. And not only that, he can be small, he can be big, he can be anybody. He can be a fish, he can be half man, half lion. So many, like the fish incarnation. How big was the fish incarnation? Does anybody remember? 8 million miles long. He's floated in this universe like a bubble, you know, it's the universe like a fishbowl there, he's floating around. And it said that every scale in the law was so beautiful that that devotees were totally attracted, as with the boar incarnation, the Raha, huge incarnation, all the hairs on the body of the Supreme Lord were so beautiful, so transcendental that all the devotees became attracted by that beautiful form of Lord Varaha. So this is the nature, spiritual nature of the Lord. And so the Lord is not subject to the influence of what we are in his material bodies. So we have material laws here, we have gravity, we have laws of karma, laws of time, but actually Krishna is not subject to that, just like with time. Krishna is called Navi Yauvanam Cha, right? Eternally useful. So at any point in time, Krishna never looks older than the age of 16, whereas we don't look very pretty when we're sort of 125 years old like Krishna was. If we get to that, if we ever get to that, imagine what we look like then. So that the fact is that we have to change bodies. We can't take birth in the same body. we may, if we want, I don't think we want it, but we can take birth in a similar body to what we had according to our karma. But quite likely we just take different bodies. We go up, we go down. Brahma, what is it? Brahma, Bhagavan, Jeev, Guru. How's that one? Sorry? Brahmanda Brahmate, Krishna Bhagavan, Jeev. We're travelling around in this universe. So for the devotee, he's not really concerned with what body he's in, as long as he has that relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is not subject. He's always got that youth. He said many births I can remember, Arjuna, me and you have had, but you can't remember your births, so we can't remember our births, but Krishna can, and he always comes in the same form. If he comes in his expansion of Nrsingadev, it's always Lord Nrsingadev, and he performs different pastimes. Sometimes we have records of Krishna in his different, in his incarnations in different yugas and so forth and so on. Not that he performs the same pastime all the time. But Krishna also, when he comes into this planet here, he observes the religious principles. He stays within the guidelines, because he explains in Bhagavad Gita, Yajna Charity Shreshtas, that whatever a great man does, common men will follow. Everybody follows in this respect. So he respects the fact that what he does, people will follow in his footsteps. So, and he explains that Paritranaya Sadhanam, that he comes with the purpose, because he's transcendental, he comes to this particular planet for a purpose. He belongs in the spiritual world. This is just another manifestation that is going on for all the living entities to understand their true nature there, but he helps them along. So he does it in two ways. Paritranaya sadhanam vinasyacha duskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuga yuga, that he comes to annihilate the miscreants and to give pleasure to his devotees. Annihilate miscreants, re-establish religious principles, give pleasure to the devotees. So like in the instance where annihilate miscreants, he can do it single-handed, like he killed Jarasandha's army of millions of soldiers. How many times? 16, wasn't it? Yeah, 16 times, 17th time he had something else to do. And but he let Jarasandha live, and Jarasandha summoned another army due to bad advice from his demoniac so-called Brahmin friends. So that was just an example. Or he could lift Govardhan Hill, this huge mountain, so he had that to give pleasure to his devotees, so he could do one or the other. And also, he come for the pleasure of his devotees. Srila Prabhupada was saying here, without the grace of the Lord, no one can become happy and prosperous, because the happiness of the family, the Lord's devotees, depends on happiness of the Lord. So the ultimate happiness we sing every morning, we just sang it this morning, Vainam Kanantam Aravinda Dayatakshram, help me out here. Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesa Sobam, Govindam Tamaham Bhajami. So Kandarpa Koti, so millions of cowherd girls, millions and billions of cowherd girls waiting to serve Krishna in that mood of amorous, loving affection. Right? So that is the ultimate pleasure which is being given by Krishna to his devotees. Now, some mundane wranglers, Prabhupada would say that actually, well, that Krishna is an amorous God, that he's he's like a very amorous God. I've heard materials describe Krishna as that, and they said preferably we like to worship Lord Ram. Lord Ram he was a very religious, he followed the religious principles strictly, and he had one wife, Sita, and he was very devoted to his wife. And as we know, in this age, the fact now is that the Lord placed, and the law is that we only have one wife. At time, place and circumstance, we can understand that in this situation. So then they say, well, Krishna had so many wives, 16,108 wives, who served him in awe and reflection, awe and reverence. All the ones in Dwarka that served him, the goddesses of fortune, served him very reverentially. And then, of course, the Kandapa Koti Kami, the thousands of millions of gopis who were loyal to him in their spontaneous love and their total surrender. We also chant in the morning here, Aslisya padam ratam pirastu mamadarshanam mahatam karodiva yata tatava vedu vampato matranas sevanapra. Remember that last verse? I don't know Krishna is my Lord Nisha remains so, even if handed roughly by his embrace, makes me broken heart by not being present before me, completely free doing everything, for it's always my worshipful unconditionally. It's a wonderful state of mind to be in, and that's the gopis. They had that state of mind. So when Krishna left, they were very philosophical about it. They were just saying, oh, you know, when a bird comes and there's berries on the tree, the bird will eat the berries on the tree until all the berries are gone, and then the bird flies away and leaves the tree. Or if a guest comes to one's house and he gets a meal, he's been given a meal, and then when all the meal is eaten, it is time for the guest to leave. So in this way, Krishna's gone and he's left us for those beautiful queens in Dwarka. Why should he want us? So that was the mood that they had. Of course, they really loved, they were totally in love with him, and they were just rationalising in this way. Of course, Krishna was not forgetting the gopis. He was so much involved with the gopis, he was obligated to their love, and he was thinking of them constantly. So that was a mood of affection. It's the ultimate mood of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's on the spiritual level. It is beyond that. So the mundane wranglers who were saying that Lord Ram, he just had one wife and he was loyal to his wife, and that was the proper situation, proper etiquette, and they worship him. In one sense, they're the immoral persons, because they are thinking that their wife that they're married to, or vice versa, wife or husband, they are my property, I own this. But actually, Krishna's the owner of everything. He's Sarva Karanam. He owns everybody, and the gopis understand Krishna's the supreme proprietor, and therefore they are serving him in that mood of love and affection that is there when one makes that perfect journey through Bhakti Yoga and comes to that platform of Brahma Buddha Prasanatma Sochiti Nakanksati, that one reaches beyond material modes, beyond hankering and limitation. That was 1854. In 1855, the next sloka describes that Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschat mitattvata tato mam tato jatva vishatet anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is only by devotional service, and when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So Krishna brought the kingdom of God here to this planet in his incarnation. He came to Vrindavan. When Lord Ram was present 2 million years before that, the sages also, because of their purification, they experienced that a love that was beyond awe and reverence. They wanted to reciprocate on the Purukya Rasa with Lord Ram in the forest. But Lord Ram said, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that in this incarnation here. Just this situation here. but in my next incarnation as Krishna, you can come and associate with me on that level. So these sages in Ramashranya were born as gopis, and they were able to associate with Krishna on this level of the highest love. So, 2 million years later. So Vidura, after much wandering, he finds a Krishna Bhakta, and so he's totally in ecstasy, so he's inquiring confidence about Krishna's pastimes. So that's the nature of a devotee, that we always want to hear about Krishna, especially when we understand that there is another devotee who understands the nature of Krishna and his transcendental qualities. So so that is a rare thing indeed. There was just a quick mention that even in Dwarka, with all Krishna's, there's Vrindavan and then there's Dwarka, and all Krishna's family and friends and sons and grandsons, they really didn't understand the essence of Krishna being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They understood him as an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature. So they understood him as being the super soul within everybody's heart. So even that was not the complete understanding. So we know we have 3 levels. We have Brahmati, Paramatma feature, and Bhagavan. So therefore, Vidura was so keen to ask so many wonderful questions of Uddhava, and this is a very, very exciting chapter. The next 2 or 3 chapters are just amazing, so stay tuned and come to all classes. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make? We've got a couple of minutes left if anybody wants to say something. Are we all done?
Thank you for the class. I don't know if this is just one of those questions that is just too in detail, but you know how the sages in Ramlila wanted to reciprocate Krishna in particular, and they came as the gopis. What happened in between? You said that 2 million years.
I was thinking that, but actually it's quite easy to understand when you understand the structure of the universe, that because they were sages, they were great rishi, or they were great sages, they were on the transcendental platform, so at the end of their life, quite likely they got transferred to the planets where sages reside, such as Ganaloka, Mahaloka, Tapaloka, and they lived out their life. Then was time to come. It's also said that when Krishna was coming, he alerted all the demigods, hey, Krishna's coming to this planet to perform his pastimes. Get ready to take birth in this material world. So that sort of fits in. Okay? Yeah. Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.